Okay, who wants to be the host?
My favorite part about this is going to just be the flying by the seat of our pants.
I guess I'll be the host. Because technically I have the most podcast experience, technically.
Really?
Hey guys, what's up? No, I'm just kidding.
Please.
Hello.
All right, Karolina, do you want to...
Hello, listeners. This is our very
What
serious
listeners?
and very novel idea that no one's ever done before.
I know, a bunch of white people get together to talk about pop culture and
Yeah.
movies, right?
This is totally
Hey, at least
new.
it's
I've never
not-
seen anything like it.
Yeah.
At least it's not just two white guys, all right?
We have a
here
girl.
for the
That's true, yeah.
diversity, the white woman.
Yeah, it's like every radio show. There's like the two guys, and then there's the one chick, and yeah. You know,
Gotta keep you guys in
Wait,
check.
so which one of us is going to be, like, playing it straight?
I mean, we'll figure it out as we go, I guess.
It can
Okay.
change episode to episode. We'll see what
Sure.
mood
That's
we're in.
true.
Okay, guys, I have a good way to start off every episode, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
I found an online star date, like, calculator. Do you guys know what star dates are?
Star
Yeah.
date? I have no
You know,
Like
idea
the
what that
Star
is.
Trek
Yeah,
years?
you know from, like, Star Trek, every episode, like, the captain's always like, captain's log, star date, whatever.
Ah,
Right,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Okay, I found an online converter, so maybe we can start with the... We'll start with the
Star
star
date?
date. Yep, so...
I can, like, you know what we can do, too, is since it's just going to be a black screen, like, picture-wise, we can put the star date somewhere
Oh my god.
in the visuals.
Beautiful, man, beautiful. Nice little heads-up display.
But we're not
Yeah.
even talking about Star Trek.
Yeah, I know.
It's a tease for the day when I finally explode and only talk about Star Trek. Star date. Negative 302416.0000189. Just a heads up, the reason it's negative is because technically Stardate 0 is January 1st, 2323. So,
that
We're
doesn't
a bit off.
that doesn't help.
yeah. So, pretty useless. Hey guys, what's up?
Hey, are you talking to
Hey.
us?
Yeah. I'm talking to the voices in my head.
It could be a Smeagol Gollum thing, you know?
Oh my god.
It's funny you mentioned that, actually, because on this episode, the very first episode, we're going to be talking about the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
The very
So-
first episode of what, Dan? I don't think we've said
I'm glad you asked. We haven't even mentioned the title yet. That's
Yeah,
right.
if you're listening to this, this is a podcast.
Yes.
It's called
Um,
Feature Length, I think is what we decided on.
The feature-length podcast, yes.
Hashtag Feature Length. Everyone go tweet that. So this should be an interesting episode because just for context here, Karolina, who is the only
That's
female
me.
voice.
Hi.
Yep, that's Carol. She has never seen Lord of the Rings, ever.
Well, until
This week. Yeah. And myself, by the way, we should probably mention our names. You know, for the
We're doing
one or
great.
yeah. So I'm Marco with a C because no one at Starbucks knows how to spell it.
I'm Karolina with a K. Also, no one at Starbucks knows how to spell that.
And I am Daniel, and I honestly don't know if anyone at Starbucks could spell my name, because I don't think I've ever gotten a coffee at Starbucks before.
Ooh, impressive.
We'll have to talk about Starbucks one day. That'll be a fun episode.
That'll be an episode
Will
for
it?
sure, yeah.
I did work there. I can give you all the juicy gossip.
Starbucks gossip.
Nothing
Okay.
really happened.
All right, so here's what we're gonna have to do here. Okay. Dan and I, obviously, major experts at Lord of the Rings.
Obviously.
Now, wait, let's clarify. At least for me, only the movies. Like, I know a ton about the movies, but nothing about extra book stuff that, like, isn't in the movies, because I've never read the books.
Yeah, I have also never read the books because I'm a fraud.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
But-
just called yourself an expert, liar.
Yeah, I know a little bit, I guess, of the history about
He's
it.
an expert fraud.
I am an expert. I'm the ultimate fraud. So this will be interesting because I think we've all recently done a rewatch.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. It's
Yeah.
really lucky that, I mean, even before we considered this episode, Marco and I had kind of took it upon ourselves to do a rewatch. We rewatched the extended editions,
Mm-hmm.
and this being Carol's first time, we all thought it was definitely best to start with the theatrical editions
Yes.
for one's first time, because they're
And
pretty
I
beefy.
thank you, because just finding 3 hours times 3 to watch all these was pretty tough. I can't imagine
Oh yeah, it's
any more time.
exhausting.
Yeah, you really have to watch the extended ones as like 6 movies.
Yeah.
It's really the only way. I mean, unless you have like literally 24 hours to kill in a day.
Which never happens, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I like to sleep.
Well, you know, who sleeps anymore? We're in our 20s.
Not
like,
me.
Yeah, it's not, you can't sleep in your 20s, you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right, Carol. So you've been holding out on us this whole week.
Yes.
It's time. You need to go off. We need your general thoughts.
Yeah, I'm excited.
We want to know how you're ranking the movies. We need all the details, okay? So let's go.
So first of all, I just want to say I don't think I would have watched them all in a week if I had an option, if we didn't have the set deadline to record on Saturday, because there was just so much information to take in and character names and place names that I just feel like I needed a week after every movie just to like recap in my head. So I finished
That's fair.
the third one today at like 3:30 p.m. and had to go back into like a Lord of the Rings fan page wiki to like write down everyone's name and place names and who they are and how they're related to each other, because there was just so much.
Right.
In general,
That's impressive. I mean, that's more homework than I've ever done for
Yeah.
the series.
that's what I'm saying. I think I dedicated probably 6 hours of my day today just to Lord of the Rings, like watching it and then Googling, because I also watched the second movie in like 4 parts, which is my bad. I kept getting interrupted. I had to go get a tetanus shot at one point. It's a long story, but
Is that related to the movie?
That sounds a lot more interesting than anything we're going to talk about.
no, it's not related to the movie. On what day? Tuesday night, I walked into a ladder and cut my...
Jesus Christ.
Like when laying on the ground, I walked into the leg of a ladder and cut my leg open like really, really bad.
Oh my god.
So then the next day I like had because we're still in the middle of a pandemic, I had a phone appointment at my walk-in clinic, and she's like, yeah, you should go get a tetanus shot immediately. So I had to take a break to do that. But we're all good now, slowly healing.
That's good.
But yeah, so I had to break up the second movie into quite a few pieces, which was not ideal. But in general, like, they were really good. I liked the world. I think I would have enjoyed it more if I watched them when they were released, like a movie a year.
Yeah,
But
that's fair.
Oh yeah.
that's okay. I learned
I think
a lot.
about that a lot too.
Did you guys watch it in theaters?
Dan?
No.
Yeah, I definitely didn't.
I think we were all too
How
young,
old
and that's
would
what I
we
was gonna
have
say.
been?
Like,
Yeah.
It was like...
I think about, like, I really wish I would have been old enough at the time, because it's something I would have been super into to go see at the theaters.
Mm-hmm.
Like, on the level of, the MCU is like our modern equivalent of that, I guess. Something to get invested at, like a series. But
Right.
yeah, it's too bad.
Yeah,
That would have been quite an experience.
I also did not obviously see it in the theaters. I think I didn't even see them like in full until like early high school.
I have a confession to make, actually.
Oh boy. Okay.
We're starting it off with a confession. Nice.
Yeah. I think it was 2012 that The Hobbit came out, right?
Yeah.
So I saw the first Hobbit movie before I ever saw any of the Lord of the Rings movies. And then I watched the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy, and then like the second Hobbit movie, and I still haven't seen the last Hobbit movie. And I like Lord of the Rings a lot better anyway.
I think I did the exact same thing, to be honest with you. I'm pretty sure I saw the first Hobbit and then watched all the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it kind of got me into it. Certainly got me into the world.
Yeah,
so
that's for sure. So, Carol, let's see here. What would you say is your rankings of the 3 movies?
I'm so glad you gave me a heads up for this, because otherwise I probably wouldn't have thought about it and taken way too long. But I think my final decision is my favorite movie, despite watching it in 10 parts, was The Two Towers.
Hell yes. Hell
yes.
yeah.
Do you guys agree?
That's my favorite.
That's my second favorite.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I think second place for me is Fellowship of the Ring, so the first one, and then Return of the King is last.
Very
okay.
interesting.
I've honestly never heard that order
Really?
from any other friend before. like from my experience, it's always been either Two Towers or Return of the King is number one, and Fellowship is always at the bottom.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting.
Well, I was looking it up, and I think it was Return of the King won best film Oscar in 2004. I didn't fact check it, but it was on the wiki, and I was very surprised.
Return of the King won I think
11
Oscars, yeah.
And it won everything it was nominated for too.
Yeah,
That's
which is pretty crazy.
Insane. Especially for like a trilogy movie, just like some
yeah,
random
like
thing
a
about
second
hobbits
sequel.
and stuff. Yeah, that's insane to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they were good. I think that's my order. I really liked In the Two Towers. I like surprise, I really liked all the trees. That
oh
was
my god. You like the worst part of that movie.
The Ents, yes.
Oh god.
They provided some nice comic relief. I'm a sucker for that. But
you should
that
watch
helped.
the extended cut of it then, because the extended cut of Two Towers has
there's so much more
double the
Really?
amount of Ent content. Yeah.
content.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
So my order, I guess we'll follow up with our orders, I guess.
Yeah.
Mine would be Return of the King, and then Two Towers, and then Fellowship. I just every time I watch through the trilogy again, I get to Two Towers, and I'm like, you know what? No, this one's my favorite one. I keep saying Return of the King, but it's this one. And then I get to Return of the King, and I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
No, it's Return of the King. There's just between the Gondor battle and the battle at the Black Gate, it's just so emotional, and I can't help every time but pick that one.
Yeah, it really is going back and rewatching it now, it's such a proto Avengers Endgame kind of
It
feeling
really is,
and
too.
ending. It's so similar to that, but obviously 15 years before.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I found that in the films, I was watching them obviously for the first time, but I found a lot of connections to other genres and newer movies that have come out, and I'm like, I wonder if it was inspired by Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
Just
Lord
fun.
of the Rings was pretty influential, I think, in terms of taking genre
It must have
movies
been,
seriously. I think
Yeah.
it really, kind of set
And
that precedent.
again, the fact that it won 11 Oscars is very ahead of its time, I feel like.
But
Yeah,
I don't think that
absolutely.
would have happened this year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, of course not.
I think it was
People would
very
be
much
too
of
pissed
its
off.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think my order is Two Towers, and then Return of the King, and then Fellowship. I will say, though, interestingly, and I'll be interested to see, Carol, in the future at some point, if you ever end up watching the, extended editions.
Yeah.
Because for the extended editions, I think I would swap Fellowship and Two Towers.
Interesting.
I think the Fellowship extended edition is... I don't know. I mean, Fellowship is all about kind of the setup to the whole series, and I feel like having a longer time with all the characters and stuff really helps the setup process, and it really makes Fellowship better. Whereas
I think that would have helped me.
Yeah. Whereas, Return of the King, and I think Dan and I have talked about this a little bit, but in the extended edition, they kind of changed the edit of a lot of the important stuff. And, it works, fine. I mean, it's still a good movie, don't get me wrong, but I think I prefer the theatrical a lot more in that sense. Yeah, one of the...
I don't... oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of the things in specific that we talked about was... So, in Return of the King, you have the whole... the Ghost Army showing up at the end.
Yes.
But, in the extended cut of Return of the King, you get, way more content with them earlier. When he goes to the cave to get them,
Yeah.
they agree to fight with him there, and then there's, a whole other battle scene with them before the ending.
Okay. Yeah, 'cause
but
I was
yeah.
kind
Oh,
of
right. That battle
surprised.
scene wasn't in the theatrical either.
Yeah, so it completely takes away the surprise, but it goes to something else we were talking about, which is that the extended editions were completely re-edited and made to be two halves of one bigger movie.
Yes. So, building upon that Army of the Dead scene, well, I don't know if I should talk about it. Carol, do you care if we talk about the extra extended edition stuff? Because we can refrain if you're planning on
No, I think
saving that
if
information.
if I watch the extended, it would probably be with you guys at some point. I can't imagine myself alone in my room ever sitting down to watch
Okay.
all of them. So I'm not that invested in the content of them. If I do, it'll just be to see it. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's not a huge spoiler. It's not really a spoiler anyway, but in that Army of the Dead scene, like what Marco was talking about is in the theatrical, I think it's, I haven't seen the theatrical in a long time, but I think it's like Aragorn enters the cave and simply asks them to fight, and then it's like it cuts to
it cuts before
the
they
Gondor
answer.
battle. And then it's like a surprise when they show up, right?
Yeah.
And then in the extended, which I actually think I prefer it this way, but like we actually get the answer of if they're gonna fight before before they cut away from Aragorn and all them, and it's like the ghost guy comes out and he's like, we fight. And I really, really think that's like just such a cool moment. And it's also connecting to what Marco you just mentioned about all the movies being split in half for the extended, where that's like pretty much at the end of disc 1, so it's an excellent little like midway conclusion. And disc 2 I think starts immediately with like the continuation of that scene where they take over the ships coming in from like the north or whatever. So it's really cool. I like how it plays into the fact that it's split in two also.
Yeah, that you're right about the split there. That is what happens. And yeah, it's pretty interesting that, you know, I mean, we were kind of joking about it earlier, how even with the Blu-ray release, they still had it on 2 discs. Even though
which is kind of surprising.
There's probably enough storage for it to be on 1 disc, right? But I think, yeah, to what we were saying, like going back to make those edits of it, they really did treat it like we're completely cutting this movie together from scratch. So at the end of every first disc, there is kind of like a mini climax. And yeah, I mean, it totally works for the extended edition. But yeah, for me, there's just, I always prefer that surprise ending. And I guess that's why I like Fellowship. And I mean, there's other reasons as well, but Fellowship for me really gets a lot better in the extended. I think of the 3, Fellowship is the one that gets like
the most benefit from
yeah,
the extension.
it has the most benefit. And I think that has to do with the fact that it's because it's like an intro. So it's like the most amount of exposition is kind of better. Like it kind of serves the movie better.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
It builds the world a little more. So
Yeah.
So Carol, let's talk about characters a little bit. Any standout characters for you that you really liked? Characters you didn't like?
Samwise is my absolute favorite.
Yeah.
I love him so much. So my notes are kind of a mess from each film. Like, it was very much like my train of thought, and so half of them start with just like, oh my god, this is happening, oh my god. And I remember distinctly during the 2 Towers at one point writing like, Frodo made Sam cry, I am so mad at him.
Oh my god, of course.
Well, because it was towards the end where Frodo almost like kills Sam because like the ring makes him do it, and so Sam has to like get him to basically like come back to the good side and not be taken over by evil completely. And he's like, it's your Sam, come back. And I was like, oh my god, this is so nice, but also how are they not in a relationship together? I feel like they had a very romantic energy.
Yeah.
But
Can
that's
I ask,
fine.
Yeah, they do.
Are Frodo and Sam like supposed to be low-key gay? Like, is that
That's
like
what I'm saying. I had a note about that, but at the end, apparently Sam's whole motivation is to just marry this woman who works in the bar, so I guess not.
Well, I want to say it's like I want to say yes, but like it seems unlikely for the time it was released, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Thinking back that these came out in like the early 2000s, right? And that was, I don't know, I feel like that wouldn't have been like that overt during that time. Again, unfortunately, if that had been the case.
Yeah,
and
I feel like if it came out now, I feel like they would be less afraid to just like say, because they were so focused on the development of their relationship through the 3 movies, and then I just found it so random when I was watching the last one today, and they were about to like die on this volcano, and Sam was just like, oh, if I could marry that girl, like, she hasn't been mentioned at all since the first movie when he was too afraid to dance with her. Like, it just seemed like it made no sense at all. You'd think they'd talk about, like, their whole journey together because that's what they've been talking about up to this point. It was just so random that in death he randomly thought about this one bar lady and marries her in the end.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I think, I mean, even going back to the books here a little bit.
Which you haven't read?
Which I haven't read, but I know a little bit of, like, the historical side of it, right? Because I'm pretty sure J.R.R. Tolkien, I want to say, like, a lot of what he was writing about, like, so, for anyone who doesn't know, he was, like, a linguist, like, a linguistics professor. And, like, the whole creation of the books kind of came from him just fooling around with, like, linguistics and, like, world creation. But I believe he was also, like, in the military, like, in World War II. And so
yeah, I think he was.
I think a lot of the Hobbits is supposed to be kind of based on him and just kind of regular guys that he knew that all ended up going in the war, you know? So I don't think that, like...
That's cool.
The theme of them being, like, gay was necessarily as present in the book. I think it was more just, like, here's a bunch of, like, regular friends that ended up having to go to war type thing. But yeah, it's interesting.
And, like, spent all their time together.
Yeah, it is interesting, though, that in the movie, like... I think, especially even, like, as time goes on, I think you can definitely read into it more that way, and it'll come across more.
But back to characters in general. Yeah, I loved Sam. I hated Boromir. I don't really think he needed to be there. I didn't like anyone in his family, to be honest.
His dad might be the worst person ever.
Not even Faramir, though?
No, I didn't like him either. Like, despite the second film being my favorite... The whole plot point of, like, him taking Frodo and Sam, I was just like, I don't need it. I could have done without it. There could have been some other drama here with them. I don't know. I wasn't into it. So that whole family, not my favorite.
Interesting.
Yeah, that also might be why the third movie is my least favorite. I mean, they obviously weren't, like, a big part of it, but just, like, there was a whole, like, section... where obviously
because it takes place in Gondor.
Yeah, Pippin had to, like, go there and work for the king, and they all had to save him from burning him alive, which was also very bizarre to me. Why he would want to burn his son alive.
Yeah, that king, man, that is a real... Like, cause I feel like
psycho.
I feel like most of the other characters have, you know, like your typical kind of fantasy motivations and stuff, and that king is maybe the weirdest fantasy character ever. Like, I can't think of, like, it is inexplicable to me.
And he's, like, the funny thing is he's one of the most grounded characters in this universe, too. So the fact that he's one of the weirdest.
Yeah, it is strange. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I mean, I laugh at him, but, like, yeah, no, it's... Yeah.
I don't know. I also have an issue with you, Marco, because you gave me a warning before I watched the first film, and you're like, oh, it's kind of like a sausage fest, there's not a lot of women.
True.
But even in the end, there's only, like, 3 significant women in the whole series. So it never really becomes that much less of a sausage fest.
Well, not that it stopped being a sausage fest, but just that there are a couple of cool female characters, at least, in it, which...
3.
Like,
there are
again,
3, the end.
For sure. But again, like, going back to a lot of fantasy in general, it's honestly kind of surprising to me to even get, like, those moments that we do get. You know? Like, I know that's kind of bad to say, but just, like, looking at a lot of the other things in the genre, or even look at something like Harry Potter, right? Like...
Yeah.
It's the same type of thing. It's like you have Hermione, but, like, Hermione's, like, you know... I mean, so much of her purpose as a character, especially in the movies, like, it's more fleshed out in the books, but in the movies, it's like Hermione just exists to get Harry from point A to point B without dying, which is, like, really crappy. So, you know, as much as it is still a sausage party at the end, like, to get that moment, or the couple of moments that you do get, I was like, oh, okay, like, at least that's something, you know? Could have been a lot worse for the time period.
By the moments that you get, do you mean when... Eowyn, is that how you say her name?
Eowyn?
Eowyn? Yeah, when she fights with everyone and she's trying to defeat that one black rider and he's like, no man can defeat me, and she takes off her helmet and says, I am no man. Is that what you mean?
I mean, not that line of dialogue in particular. No, I mean, just her character in general I thought was pretty cool overall, but I'm also not a woman, so I don't know.
I'm actually trying to think of. You were talking about 3 strong female characters. I'm struggling to.
There's Eowyn. What's the Steven Tyler's daughter? What's her name?
Arwen.
Oh.
Arwen,
Liv
played
Tyler?
by Liv Tyler.
Yeah.
And
Is
then
there-
there's
is there
the
someone
lady
else?
of Lady of the Woods, Galadriel,
Oh,
played
Galadriel.
by
Galadriel.
That's right.
Kate Blanchett.
And the last 2 do almost nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it is pretty bad.
It's a lot on Eowyn's shoulders there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, at least I will say, like, going back to the Harry Potter example, at least their sole purpose isn't just to, like, further the plot of the guy protagonist, you know?
Yeah, that is true.
Like,
Yeah, like they have their own kind of plot lines.
yeah, they have their own plots, they have their own motivations, their own character stuff. It's like, you know,
I mean,
at least.
debatedly, Arwen doesn't really, because her.
Yeah, mostly Eowyn.
Yeah, mostly Eowyn, mostly. I guess I'm really just talking about Eowyn, yeah, when you
Yeah, I
think about
mean,
it. 'Cause
okay,
the other,
Galadriel doesn't even have. She doesn't have a plot.
she just freaks out in the
So-
woods for a little bit.
Yeah, and she's like, never mind.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, okay.
technically, Frodo does see a vision of her after being attacked by the spider, and she helps him up. So there's that.
Yeah, but again, that's just like helping the
I actually
stupid-
did entirely forget that she was in the films, because when I went on IMDb today, I was like trying to type in like who played which characters and all the names, and I saw
Right.
Galadriel, and I was like, what was that again? I don't remember seeing Kate Blanchett. Because she was in
Wow.
it for like 2 seconds.
She is, yeah.
Sorry, Kate.
She's in it a bit more in the extended, but it's nothing like substantial. It doesn't matter that much.
You mentioned like Frodo's vision, or I don't even know if was it a vision or just like
truly don't know.
he like heard her voice in Return of the King. I think my one only actual problem with the series that's like kind of schlocky is the fact that they set that starlight thing up in the first movie, never mentioned it again, and then it came back during like the climax of the last movie. But
and it wasn't
I mean, it's
really
just a
that
minor thing.
helpful. Yeah, it just served as a light, and it didn't even really scare the spider off that much.
yeah, and I also realized like last time I rewatched was like I think doesn't Sam blind it at some point?
Yeah.
So like that serves no purpose after you blind the thing, right?
Well, he blinds it towards the end, so he fights with it for
Sure.
a while.
Stupid spiders. What is with fantasy and giant spiders? Can someone tell me that?
I don't know. Because I always think of Aragog from Harry Potter when I
Yeah,
get
same.
to that Shelob scene.
It's...
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Also, Aragorn's name, I kept thinking of Aragon. You know,
Yeah.
like the books with like the dragons.
Oh,
Dragon movie.
oh, you mean... Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Those that early 2000s dragon movie with the books that were everywhere for like 5 minutes.
It's based on a trilogy of books. I read, I think, the first 2. Maybe half of the last one. I already can't remember. But, so every time I kept wanting to write down Aragon, but I had to add that extra R in.
Yeah. Every time I want to say Frodo, I always accidentally say Fredo, and that's a whole thing. in
Oh,
and of itself,
really?
Too. Yeah. Yeah.
Like from Godfather?
Oh, you know it. He's also just as ineffectual. Frodo, listen, nice guy.
He is
Just-
not the protagonist of this film.
He
There's
is
no fucking way.
a waste of space. You should have just given it to Samwise at the start. Samwise would have done it. You know what I mean? Frodo's like, no, Sam, like, you can't do it. I have to do it. I'm like, Frodo, just shut up. Like, you're just the worst.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. Why couldn't Sam do it? Because it's not like he couldn't take the ring, because he did when he thought Frodo was dead. So what?
Well, it's not that like it's not that he literally couldn't. It's like he didn't want it. He didn't want to pass it on to Sam. And I know, Marco, you were joking how
I
like
definitely...
Frodo's useless.
Yep, jokes.
Right? That was a joke, right? But like I think the point is the person that would have gotten it, like when Frodo got it, they would have been corrupted just the same. Like Sam probably would have been corrupted just the same, and they need that like that partner to like help them along. You know, like the scene where Sam doesn't carry the ring, but he carries the ring carrier.
Yeah.
True.
It's kind of like
Very
a
impressive
barrier
also.
between him and the ring.
Yeah, for sure.
Sam is very strong. I don't
So-
think I could carry
Yeah, I know,
my
right?
friend up a mountain.
Yeah, I always think about that too, because it's like whenever I picture that scene in my head, it's always like they're they're at the entrance, right? And he's just
No.
gonna no. It's like they are at the base of the mountain, and this guy is
Yeah.
climbing up a volcanic mountain with Frodo.
Which is hard enough on your own
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
you're not carrying anything.
It's like, my God, man, Samwise's the boy. So on this topic of Frodo, though, I
Yes.
have an interesting conversation that Dan and I have had, not recorded, but it'll be interesting to get your thoughts on this as well.
Okay.
It has to do with the ending, really, because it's weird because the movie ends in a way that makes you think that, like, Frodo completed the hero's journey, except Frodo literally fails at the end of the movie. Like,
Yeah.
he is 100% failed, and the only reason the ring gets destroyed is that Gollum, like, bites his finger off in their
Yeah.
fight.
Yes.
Which seemingly, like, it shouldn't work, right? Like, from the rules of, like, storytelling, you know, like, Frodo failed at his journey, so he shouldn't get to have, like, the happy ending or whatever, because, you know, that's just, like, the rules of storytelling. You're not supposed to be able to do that, but somehow the ending still feels satisfying.
Yeah.
I have a theory on this, which is that I don't think Frodo's ending is really actually the happy ending. And I think that ties into Samwise a little bit too, because even though Sam and this girl is, like, stupid and ridiculous, and like, it makes no sense. I'm totally with you. It's not set up at all. But I think it's important to show that, you know, Frodo coming back to the Shire, like, he can't meet someone, even if it is a stupid person that, you know, and, like, he can't.
Even if it is stupid.
Yeah, and he has to, like,
Yeah,
him
I
go.
don't think the bar lady is stupid, just for the record.
Well, she's
I
one of
never
the
said
only.
that.
She's one of the only four female characters in this franchise, and she doesn't even speak once on camera. But I think like, Frodo leaving and going on the boat at the end of the movie, even though it's almost played as, like, this happy ending, like, our heroes did it, is actually like he straight up failed. Like, that's him, like, accepting that he, like, failed at his task, and even though the task got completed, like, because of the rules of storytelling, he can't actually go back to having a regular life, you know?
Yeah, like, Frodo kind of gets the tragic ending,
Yeah.
is what you're saying.
Yeah.
And Sam gets the happy ending?
Yeah, exactly. Because Sam ultimately is. It's interesting, like, Carol, what you said about Frodo, like, not even, like, being the protagonist because he's so, like,
Yeah.
ineffectual. It's really interesting how I think the reason it works, and I don't know if, like, Tolkien does this on purpose, because, again, like, the guy's just, like, a linguist. I mean, like, not to like
He's
He's just a linguist.
not to diminish his importance, but his approach to this wasn't as, like, I am a literary, like, pure novelist or whatever. So I think it almost, like, accidentally works, but it's because I think, like, Frodo and Sam together, like, constitute the protagonist of Lord of the Rings, you know?
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I've never thought about it that way.
And it's like Frodo fails and Sam succeeds, and so even though the ending feels happy, because even though, like, Frodo technically gets the sad ending, you're ultimately left with Sam being able to come back, and it's, you know, it kind of works that way. It kind of circumvents the traditional structure.
I think that
That's really
helps.
cool.
Yeah, I think that helps me with the ending, because I was kind of confused as to why they would want Frodo on that boat with him, because personally I don't see what value he would bring. I think it just, like, so happens that he got this ring because his uncle had it. I don't really think anything about his character makes him necessarily, like, a good hero.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like if anything, Sam had those characteristics. So, yeah, that kind of being, like, a sad ending, not like a punishment, but, like, the fact that that's not what he wanted, probably in the end, makes more sense to me, as because I kind of saw it as, like, he is this great hero and he is indispensable, so he must continue on with this group of heroes. But that makes more sense the way you explained it.
It's interesting, too, because, like, when you think about this boat that they're all going on, and they're literally sailing into the sunset. It's, like, the ultimate joke of, like, at the end
Yeah.
of a movie, right? But you think about all the characters that are leaving. Like, it's, first of all, the elves that are leaving. And the elves
Yeah.
are leaving because their time on Earth has ended. And then,
Yeah.
like, his uncle is leaving. His uncle, who is an ultimate sketch crackhead, who, like, still, like, literally, like, if you, like, and when you watch The Hobbit, I mean, ultimately the story of The Hobbit is the story of this low-key guy who gets this ring and then kind of becomes infatuated with it, and kind of becomes a bad person. And then Frodo goes, and then I think Gandalf goes too, right?
Yeah.
Gandalf goes, yeah.
So it's interesting because even though it's like they're all sailing off into the sunset, it's like a bunch of people that are like going somewhere because like their time is up.
They're done.
Yeah, like the
Yeah.
elves are done. Gandalf
Yeah.
came back specifically to finish this, and now he's done. And it's not really like going off to be happy. It's more like going off to your like death. Like it's literally death of just like now it's nothing. Like you're done.
It's like retirement, yeah.
Yeah, it's not.
And that's
yeah.
the way I think about it is like Frodo is definitely the tragic character, much like Gollum, right?
Yeah.
And Bilbo too, because he never really moves on. Like, how do you even move on after the journey that they went through? And he never like his wound from Weathertop never heals, which I
Yeah.
think is like the most literal way they could have portrayed him never actually moving on.
Yes, for sure.
And so, yeah, I think you're totally right. Like, even though maybe when we were younger we would have perceived it as, oh, everything's great now because the world has been saved and like they can go live their life. I think you put it the best. I don't think that's actually what's happening at the end there.
Yeah, it's just an interesting. I think in a lot of ways, as much as Lord of the Rings kind of invents so much about like what we consider like, you know, now like fantasy tropes, it's also like really smart about the ways that it doesn't fall into those tropes. And I like the idea of like riding off into the sunset is like such a joke now in so many things. But yeah, I think it's just really done in like a clever way here. Sorry, so we got like derailed there from the character talk, but that's okay. That was an interesting conversation. So, Carol, it's time now we talk about objectively the best, well, the two best Lord of the Rings characters, okay?
Okay, I'm very
We're gonna
intrigued
start,
as to who this
first
is
of
gonna
all,
be.
Okay, the first one is Gollum. We got to talk about Gollum.
Really? The best Lord of the
What-
Rings character?
I mean, he's like legendary.
He is the ultimate Lord. What do you think of Gollum? Let's get your Gollum. Talking about Gollum. Gollum thoughts here,
Yes.
folks.
Well, Gollum, initially, I didn't think he would be as big of a player as he ended up being. I mean, I guess I should have assumed. But yeah, I don't know. What's his deal? Is he, like, does he have multiple personality disorder? Like, what's with the us and the Gollum-Smeagol duality? Do you guys know? Or does the audience know? Or are we just supposed to, like, know something vaguely is wrong in his head?
I've always like perceived it as when the ring started to corrupt him, Gollum became his like a second personality, like you said.
Yeah, same.
And Smeagol, like the Hobbit that once was, is sort of like subservient, I guess.
Yeah, I thought I heard him, like, when they did the flashback to him as a human before they found the ring. I thought he talked about himself in, like, multiple persons before the ring even existed, but maybe I'm wrong.
That's
But
interesting.
anyway.
I don't remember that, but yeah.
Yeah.
I might remember what you're talking. Do you mean like when he says like give it to us?
Yeah.
Okay, that is interesting because I actually noticed that too the last time I watched it, and I assumed I might be wrong, but I assumed it's because like that's his first encounter with the ring, the first time he ever knew it existed. You know?
Yeah.
Maybe that like sparked some of like that was his response to it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
'Cause that's why I was like, oh, has he always had both of these personalities and just they became stronger when he had the ring? But anyway, yeah. So Gollum was interesting. I mean, I knew he would obviously throw a wrench in the plan at some point. I didn't think when he showed up he would just nicely lead them to where they needed to go. But in the last movie, I was just very angry at him all the time. Especially when he made Frodo tell Sam to like stay behind because he thought he like ate all the food and told him that he was going to try
That
to
was
steal the ring.
heartbreaking.
I
Yeah.
was so angry. Especially because obviously we've discussed Sam as my favorite character. I was very upset.
Yeah. That's the
What
worst.
what was his fate in the end? I don't think I remember.
Gollum?
Yeah.
He falls.
Oh, right. Yeah, how
He
did I
falls into
forget?
Gollum is the hero of the story, dude. He's straight up. He's the one that
He
ends up
is
destroying the
reason.
ring.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I think that makes sense to me. He's been alive for 500 years. He deserves to be
Die.
at peace eventually.
Yeah.
Like,
My
he
favorite
just
part
needs to
about that
die.
shot too is like when he impacts with the lava, he did like you can tell by his face he doesn't even feel it or care. Like even in his last seconds, he's just focused on the ring, which is just so sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the last thing that goes under. Like, he keeps his hand out
Yeah.
specifically to try to save it.
Poor Gollum, man. We've all been there.
Have you?
I've definitely been there. The other character I was gonna bring out now that we need to talk about is Gandalf.
Yes.
Oh, really? I totally thought the second character was gonna be Aragorn.
Oh well, we can talk about Aragorn too, but Gandalf is weird because he's one of those characters that like just knows stuff when he needs to know stuff, but then doesn't when he is such a plot device, but also I don't know if, like how well it works in the books, but in the movies with Ian McKellen playing him, it's like you can't not just
Yeah,
love
you're
him.
right. Like he's
Yeah.
totally a plot device, but he has such a great character as well, so it's fine.
Yeah, it totally works. Carol, what was your reaction to Gandalf dying in Fellowship?
Okay, well, when he was first introduced, I didn't know if he was going to genuinely be a good character. Like, at the very beginning in the Shire, when he was trying to, like, help Bilbo with the ring and get it from him and all that stuff, I was like, are there ulterior motives here? What's going on? Like, eventually, by the time he, like, talks to Saruman, I'm like, okay, he's, like, good. But, when he dies, I was like, there's no way that this is his actual end. Like, it was just so... I don't know, so pathetic almost. Like, he was
Yeah.
up against this big creature, fine, but then in the end he doesn't really die because the creature kills him. He, like, dies because the creature knocks him to the edge and he just isn't able to hold on.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's, like, that's kind of pathetic. Like, for such a, like, grand character, there's no way this is his end. So, like, I wasn't really that upset. I was like, I don't know what they're gonna do, but they're gonna do something and he's gonna be back. Like, there's just no way his end is because he couldn't hold on to the edge of this cliff.
Right.
So I was
How
kind of
old is
unaffected.
Gandalf?
Do we know?
Uh,
I'm wondering.
I don't know.
I know he's like super. I think it's like at least 1,000 years, but I'm not sure.
I assumed
Do you guys want me to Google it?
thousands.
all right, let me Google it, guys. How
Important
old
question.
is Gandalf? Okay, let's see. Approximately 2,019 years old.
Nice.
Okay.
Oh god. All right. That is very old, man.
He didn't live to 2020, eh?
Nope.
So
Well, lucky
close.
him. Because we all did, and let me tell you something, folks. It's been a hell of a year.
But yeah, I don't know. He was a good character. Why did he have to change his name when he came back? Is there a reason?
Because he's not great anymore.
Yeah, now he's white.
Right, of course.
I think so. Like, this is just me brainstorming, but I think and totally not in a racist way, but I think the white form of every wizard is supposed to be like the most elevated, most wise form. Like, I'm assuming that Saruman
Yeah.
was once gray or whatever,
Yeah.
or a different color, and like he elevated to the white cloaks or whatever. I don't know. Maybe he died too and came back. I have no idea. But
So, again, totally not in a racist way, but what I've always taken from it is that in the wizarding race, the like whoever has the title of the white, like Dan said, is like the leader. And there's a line of dialogue. I forget exactly what he says, but when he's first revealed in Two Towers to Aragorn and Legolas,
Yeah.
he has some kind of dialogue about like being brought back or whatever, and I feel like the idea is supposed to be that like I don't know, the universe or like magic brought him back because Sauron has been corrupted, that he's like gonna be like the good white wizard, you know? Like Saruman isn't, he may be the white wizard in title, but like he's kind of not that anymore. So like the
wizards need their new
Yeah.
leader because he can't fulfill it. That's interesting.
that's always kind of how I took it, but it's not made explicit like a lot of things in this. So
It's cool to think about, though.
yeah, it's an interesting idea. Speaking of Legolas, that's an interesting character, right? Orlando Bloom just shooting arrows, doesn't
I
really
totally
do anything.
forgot that he was in this film. Because like despite not seeing it, obviously because it's just so big in pop culture, I know a lot about it. Like even the Eye of Sauron, I feel like has been talked about in podcasts I listen to and stuff. Like a lot of the names of characters and places, I was just like, yeah, of course, like I know that. And so I just knew that a blonde-haired Orlando Bloom was in this film, and then I completely forgot till I saw him, and I got very excited. And then he wasn't that big of a deal. Like he was part of the Fellowship, and like yeah, he was in the wars and stuff, but I don't think he was that like they just didn't make him do anything memorable, really.
There's a really funny tweet that I saw that's like it's like Legolas, and it's a quote from him saying to Frodo,
I saw
like,
you like this.
yeah, he's like, you have my bow, when they're all saying stuff, and then it's like, yeah, and then they never spoke for the entire rest of the series. It's like,
Yeah.
they make such a big deal of that, and then literally they don't interact, like, once.
Yeah.
Gimli too. Yeah.
Same with Gimli. That's a great scene. That's a great, awesome moment. But yeah, it's just pretty funny to think about the fact that we literally don't see Frodo interact with anyone besides like Aragorn, Gandalf, and Samwise, and Boromir before he snaps.
Yeah, barely even Merry and Pippin.
Oh yeah, barely Merry and Pippin.
Even then, I feel like Legolas and Gimli were only there to interact with each other. Like they were just there for that like silly little elf dwarf friendship dynamic they had going on.
Sure.
But like
Yeah.
that's kind of it.
I love that friendship though.
It was a yeah. It was.
Yeah, they're pretty hilarious together. They're good, like, comic relief, but not in a, like, stupid way, because they actually are also, like, useful characters, but, yeah.
Yeah, and I do think that, like, even Legolas has some cool moments. He's obviously not a very deep character, but
Yeah.
I don't know, like, especially during the Two Towers Helm's Deep battle, he has some good moments there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think in the books, again, as someone who has never read them, but just has some context for them, I don't think he was ever as important as a character, which is why, like, there's not as much for him to do in the movies, but obviously they cast Orlando Bloom, so I think it was kind of like, let's just give him cool shit.
Show him as much as possible.
Yeah, let's give him cool shit to do in the battles, and that'll make up for the fact that he's kind of nothing and doesn't care about really anything, has no motivation.
But I did write that in some of my notes were specifically Orlando Bloom going down the stairs on a shield. Cool.
That is cool. I can't deny that. That's a really cool moment.
Have to agree.
So he was there for fun moments like that.
Yeah, and I liked his little game with Gimli where they, like, keep count of how many people they kill.
Yeah. That's really
and
fun.
at one point, Aragorn has to throw Gimli over to, like, a platform where everyone's battling, and he says, okay, fine, throw me, but don't tell Legolas.
That's such a great moment. I love that. I love the way he says it, too.
Don't tell the elf.
He's just like, all right, throw me. And Aragorn's like, what? What did you just say? And he's like, you can throw me, but yeah, just don't tell the elf. It's so good. Carol, what are your favorite battles, since we're talking about that? I know you're not a super, like, action person, so I'm kind of interested to hear your thoughts on the action stuff in this, because it is pretty, like, I mean, for the time and even now, it kind of holds up as being some of the best on-screen, like, war stuff. So.
Yeah, thinking back, I also think the reason that Return of the King is my least favorite film is because it was just a bunch of battles, and as you mentioned before, that's not like my draw to films typically.
Sure.
But surprisingly, I did really love the battle in the second film. I don't remember Helm's Deep, is that what it was called?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked just like the setup of that and the dynamics and all of the ladders and the catapults, like just they kept throwing curveballs in your direction, which I really loved. It's like one of the rare times I was like amused and enthralled by like a fight scene, because normally I just kind of like zone out for those. But yeah, no, they were very entertaining. I think that's probably why the movies were so long, because they wanted to focus on the battles so much, which me as a person didn't need, but like I understand why it fits in with the story and like why it's so like revolutionary, especially at the time, because like the effects were great. They had a lot of people there fighting.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and some great practical effects too. Like, gotta respect that costuming department for what they did.
Yeah, it's pretty...
Some great stuff.
It's pretty crazy. I think it fell into that sweet spot, yeah, where it's like we can't really do everything with CGI, so we're gonna have to do a lot of this practical, but also understanding and like having like the best CGI people in the world do the parts like that you need to be done, and it really kind of comes together. Yeah, to what you're saying, Carol, I think like everyone kind of thinks Helm's Deep is the best. I don't know, Dan. I don't think you and I have ever like specifically critiqued the battles, but
Rank the battles.
Yeah.
for me, it's always Helm's Deep too. I just feel like it's like the best paced battle I've ever seen on film, because to what you're saying, it's like every time something starts to feel like, okay, just action, there's like some new element that changes in it. Like yeah, like whether it's the ladders, whether it's like them blowing up the wall, or even just like just cutting to a new character doing something fun and cool, and it goes on for the perfect amount of time, and it's just so well put together. And like Return of the King, again, great battles. Not gonna say that's not true, but yeah, I don't know, just something about Helm's Deep like always comes together for me as like just endlessly rewatchable and just like the most well put together battle.
Yeah, I'd have to agree actually with Helm's Deep being number one, and I think most of the reason why Return of the King is my favorite is because the combination of the two major battles in that movie. But like in terms of single battles, I'd have to agree, definitely Helm's Deep. Like you said, the pacing is like spot on. That moment when the orc charges with the torch into the wall is like probably my favorite part, to be honest.
Oh, it's so good. It's so awesome.
I wrote in my notes,
great.
who is this Mad Max orc?
He does look very Mad Max.
That's great. I also just love how the battle starts. Like they're all just like poised, and it's this super tense moment, and like the tension is like so perfectly broken with the one guy just accidentally firing the arrow. It's like, I don't know, it's such like a silly thing. Like I can imagine someone pitching that and being like, oh, that's dumb, like really, but like it works so well in the movie as like a start to everything. It's just, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, well, the thing is too, like one of the reasons it works is because they're talking about before the battle how most of the soldiers are like kids and old men.
Yeah.
So, like, none of these people are professionally trained, right?
Yeah.
Which kind of makes that moment, I feel like it makes it a little more dramatic.
Yeah, for sure. You're right. And also, I think it ties into what we were talking about with, like, this being, like, based a lot on the idea of, like, regular people fighting in World War II. It kind of plays into that idea, right? Of a lot of the times you see with, like, the, like, Men of Gondor or whatever, they're not all soldiers, and that's kind of a theme that spreads across pretty much all the movies, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And with Helm's Deep too, it's like the situation is like they're literally backed into this canyon, right? They're surrounded by walls, and they're in this sort of an equivalent to like an emergency bunker. I think that contributes a lot to the desperation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So my next question for you, Carol, is going to be, we've been, we touched on it a little bit here and there, but Aragorn as a character. So at least for me, and I was talking with Dan about this, but on this rewatch for me, it really kind of hit me like, oh, Aragorn is like my favorite. Like he is the best, and he might be my favorite. Like the whole trope of like, you're the rightful king, and you need to come back and like become king is like really overdone. But
yeah, it's really cliche.
Oh my god,
generally.
like Aragorn and like Viggo Mortensen like playing him is just, it's so perfect, and it's never like, it's always like confident but not in a way that's like annoying, like I'm the best, but like I don't know, it's just great, and I've always loved it. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I also really liked him as a character. I think he was the most useful, for sure.
I love how you're ranking everyone based on their usefulness. You're like, Frodo, not useful, definitely shouldn't go to the afterlife.
Okay, I just think if this is a whole trilogy based on accomplishing one task, then the usefulness is a very important way to rank the characters.
Okay, fair point.
How useful were they in them? Okay, also, I need to admit that when I got to the end of the first film, I truly expected them to be at the Eye of Sauron with the ring. I don't know why. And so then it just ended, and I was like, oh, wait, this is happening at the end of the third movie? What's in the middle?
Well, I'm actually still surprised that they technically make it to Mordor like halfway through the second movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the
But-
outside. But back to Aragorn. Yeah, he was. It made sense. I liked how he was introduced, especially how the first film started with obviously the history of the ring and how it was with. I mean, it wasn't his father who had it, was it?
No, it was like I think it was like 1,000 years ago.
It's like-
but
Okay.
he was
Yeah, it's one of his ancestors.
descendant.
He's a
Yeah.
descendant. Yeah. So I liked how then he was kind of revealed slowly. Like initially we didn't know like who he was or how he was tied into the story at all. He was just, what did they call him? The striker or something?
Strider.
Strider. Close enough. I almost got it. But yeah, no, he kept the plot going for sure and like tied in a lot of different elements. But yeah, I don't know, he seemed almost like supernatural to me. I mean, I know he wasn't, but he really should have died quite a few times.
He's just that cool.
And he's like in with the elves too.
Yeah.
Even though he's totally not an elf.
The only thing I don't like about him, and this is something I know for a fact from the books, all right? So don't no one at me and be like, Marco's never read the books. Like, I know this for a fact, is that his whole romantic subplot doesn't actually, like, exist in the books.
Oh.
So, like, what's Liv Tyler character's name? I always forget. Eowyn?
Arwen.
Arwen. Yeah, they have the exact same name. There's, like, one letter difference. So, in the books, Arwen has this, like, it might not even be in the story proper. It might be in, like, the appendices of just, like, the world building. Her whole thing of, like, wanting to stay on Earth because she's, like, in love with this guy or whatever, it's just, like, a subplot, and you never really find out who the guy is. But that was something that they were like, you know what? Like, we can attribute this to Aragorn, and give him that kind of romantic kind of subplot throughout the movie. So that's what they did. And to me, that's, like, the least interesting part of the story, because I feel like it just kind of comes in and out, and I never really care one way or the other. Yeah, I don't know. It just that part for me always feels a little weak, but I guess it makes sense considering that it was never supposed to be attributed to him in the first place.
But then in the books, does he still have this tie to the elf world and like know the language despite not being in love with this elf woman?
Yeah, I believe so, and I think it's just like through his friendship with Legolas, right? Because they're like best friends or whatever. For some reason, they know each other.
You don't get that at all in the movies though until like they
No.
actually meet.
Yeah, but yeah, as far as I know, like they had some kind of history together, and that was his tie to the elf world. But yeah, in the movies, it's really overblown that he's like madly in love with Liv Tyler, and then there's like the weird like, I don't know, like because then when they go to Gondor and he meets the chick there, he's like, they kind of like flirt a lot, and it's like, that for me is just like the most like generic. Like, oh, it's a movie, so we have to do this because like every movie has to have this type of thing in it, and it, you know, I mean, in 3-hour-long movies, like if you wanted to cut something, for me that would be the one thing where it's like, we don't need this. I get it. I like him. I don't need to like relate with him like having a love interest. It just seems kind of silly.
Yeah, it didn't really further the plot in any meaningful way, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what you're saying about him and Eowyn, but I also, I don't know, I think I like his little like love story with Arwen because I feel like that's the strongest thing driving him throughout the trilogy.
Sure.
I mean, besides, you know, going on to rule a kingdom.
Yeah, and impending doom.
Yeah.
It's
That one
interesting.
thing.
Death, but
It's interesting too, right? Because I haven't watched the theatricals in so long, and I'm basing a lot of this off of the extended cuts. And I know in the extended cuts, there's like a lot of like flashbacks to them, and it's just a lot of like the same kind of theme being repeated over and over. I wonder if like watching it in theatrical form, if that opinion would change. I haven't seen it in a while, but yeah.
possibly.
Also, I do need to admit that during the third film, I looked down at one point, and it was when everyone was having a party after, like, Legolas and everyone was reunited with Merry and Pippin. I looked down, and when I looked back up, Aragorn was talking to Eowyn, and I, for some reason, was convinced that this was their wedding reception and that they had just gotten married. So up until the end of the third movie, I thought that they were married, and then he was still thinking and dreaming about Arwen, and I'm like, but you have a new wife? What's going on? So I had to Google that and correct myself because I was very confused for a second.
Hey, listen, you watched all these movies for the first time this week. Like, I have seen them many times, and I've seen the extended editions, and I'm still very confused a lot of the times and don't know a lot of the character names. Like, it is so dense with content.
Yeah, it was a long week. It was a long day.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet. What else? Have we missed any major characters, any major plot things that happen?
Well, it's not a plot thing per se, but I kind of wanted to ask, like, there's quite a few speeches throughout the trilogy given by characters, like a good handful of them, and I was wondering, like, which one maybe was your guys's most memorable or, like, favorite. Like, I love, like, Gandalf's speech to Pippin about death during the Gondor battle in Return of the King. There's, like, Sam's little speech at the end of Two Towers.
Yeah, I think that was the one that I initially gravitated to. It was cheesy as heck, but I was like, oh, this is a good way to end the film. Like, I like that a lot.
Yeah. I think...
It was heartwarming.
So this is tough. I think I really like the moment of, like, the people from Gondor coming in to save the day, like, in the Return of the King battle, when he's, like, riding up and down and, like, hitting all their swords with his sword or whatever. I don't really like that speech, per se. Like, it's fine. But I really like that moment, and I like how they bring in, like, the musical theme again when, like, all the riders come down the hill. It's, like, it's a really awesome moment. I actually think my favorite moment of just, like, one character saying something really cheesy, which is, like, basically every speech in this movie is just a character talking for a long time and saying something cheesy. And my favorite one isn't necessarily a speech to a large group of people, but I love Aragorn and Frodo at the end of Fellowship. When I think, like, Frodo offers him the ring, right? Where, like, something happens and he's like, oh, or he's like, will you try to take this from me? I don't know, it's something like that. And then Aragorn just, like, closes Frodo's hand and he says, like, I would have gone with you to the very steps of Mordor or something like that. I forget the actual, like, phrasage of what he says, but, like, that moment for me really stuck out this time, where I was like, oh, that's, like, a really cool, interesting moment that, like, works and is, like, kind of cheesy, but not, like, overtly cheesy. I don't know. It was just a really cool moment for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, that was right before they had to part ways, right? Because Aragorn had to stay back to fight everyone off and, like, keep track of everyone else and let Frodo and Sam go ahead. Yeah,
it's a cool moment. It's a cool character moment for Aragorn, too, because we just see Boromir be such a piece of shit. And then, so for Aragorn to be like, I recognize that I would just be a problem if I came along, but also, like, when I said, like, you have my sword, like, I legitimately meant that. Like, I'm not just flaking out. Like, I know this is just what's best for you type thing. It's a cool moment. It's really complex. I like it.
Yeah, even with Merry and Pippin, like, they see Frodo leaving, and they're like, all right, this is what he has to do.
Yeah. I feel like in a lot of other fantasy, I'm not going to call anything out here, but, you know, Harry Potter. Listen, I like Harry... Let's just put this out there. I like Harry Potter. J.K. Rowling is a sketch. But...
We'll definitely do a Harry
We'll have
Potter
to, because Carol hasn't seen Harry Potter either, so...
What?
She's saying... I think you saw the first two and hated them, right?
Yes. I think I fell asleep during the majority.
That's totally fair. Those are my least favorite of the entire series.
Yeah, those two are brutal. They're really hard to get through.
Yeah.
Just, they're so long.
If we do ever do an episode on those, please give me longer than a week heads up, please.
You're the one who said, and we were like, we should do this, and you were like, I will watch them all in a week. And I was like, okay.
Well, you guys said you were free Saturday, so I was like, okay, I'm in it for the team. I can do this.
Yeah.
And I did, for the record.
Well, you did good. You had a real Frodo moment there. Totally. We kind of had to carry you to the end, but you made it. No, the only reason I brought up why did I bring up Harry Potter again? What was I talking about?
I have no idea.
You didn't want to throw shade. We were talking about
here's what
characters.
It is.
Okay.
We were talking about how Frodo leaves, and everyone's like, yeah, that's what's best for the story. In Harry Potter, I feel like multiple times per movie and book, there is a character who tries to do something on their own, and then everyone gets pissed off at them, and it's just like this false drama bullshit. Like, remember it, like, in Goblet of Fire, like, it happens with Ron and Harry, and, like, it is insufferable in the book. In the book, it is, like, chapters and chapters of Ron just being all pissed that, like, Harry's gonna be in the tournament, and Harry's like, what is your... And, like, admittedly, like, it's like, yeah, like, this is such false like we just need something to happen here and it's boring and it doesn't ring true. It's like that. It's like, you know, like in old sitcoms where it's like if two people literally just talked for like 5 seconds, the episode wouldn't happen. Yeah, and so I'm really glad we don't have that. Like, I love that, like, when Frodo leaves, everyone kind of acknowledges, like, cool. Like, we know what he's doing, and we're going to trust him, and we have our own thing that we have to do as well. And it doesn't create, like, false drama. There's actually a lot of other interesting stuff going on in the story.
Yeah, and even speaking of Harry Potter, what I thought you were going to mention is every single time Harry goes off to do something, Hermione and Ron are just like, yeah, well, you know we're coming with you, right? Like, we have to.
This should just be a dunking on Harry Potter podcast. Because literally, no, Dan's not even...
I'm okay with that.
Literally every time, Harry's like, I have to do this because I am the chosen one. And then Ron and Hermione are like, Harry, come on. And then he's like, okay. And that's it. Like, there's nothing... It's not like Harry ever went off on his own and failed and then had to, like, learn to let his friends help. It's just, like, just a conversation for the sake of having the conversation. And it's really dull after a while.
Like, don't get me wrong, Harry Potter, it's one of my favorite, like, fantasy series, but yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, I think Harry Potter, at its inception anyway, was definitely, like, for kids more than this was. So it kind of makes sense that even as the stories matured, like, a lot of the, I guess you can say, like, tropes that she established in the world kind of continue on, you know, throughout the stories, where it's like, we've developed the language here, and this is just who Harry, Ron, and Hermione are, and even though it's a little bit childish, like, you kind of have to keep it that way, because if you made it too different, then it wouldn't really ring true anymore, so...
But I think that's also why I was surprised that at the end of the first movie, even, the main group of people that you come to know as, like, the team that is going to get rid of this ring was so divided. And I was like, oh, the rest of the movies are going to be like this. Okay, I'm in. But then also it made so that you had to pay attention to more distinct storylines. And I was like, oh, this is a lot.
It is a lot.
3 completely different places.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot.
Yeah.
I'd also say it's one of my favorite, like, aspects of the trilogy, though.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite moments in Two Towers is the introduction of Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas, where it's, like, the super wide shots of them running over hills and like the heroic music. It's like, oh, okay, we're picking up with these characters now, and like Aragorn is almost everyone's favorite, so that feels like such a grand moment.
Yeah, that is it's awesome. And yeah, and to what you're saying, Dan, I also agree. It just feels like, yeah, it just feels so much more interesting because it's not the typical thing that you would do in a movie like this. And, like, not to say that you can't make a movie like that and also have it be interesting. I mean, there's plenty of... I mean, like we said, Harry Potter is, like, pretty good all the way through. And even Star Wars kind of has that trope of, like, well, there's a team and maybe we'll break up for a little bit, but always by the end of every movie we'll come back together.
Star Wars is, that's a totally
I know.
different
I gotta be
conversation.
careful when I say Star Wars because it's just I'm gonna snap, so... yeah, no, it's still... As much as it, like, has inspired so many tropes, it's so crazy to look back and be like, well, it still does all of them the best and, like, the most unique in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's aged mostly, like, in most areas, it's aged extremely well.
Yeah.
Like, in the action scenes, a lot of the effects, like, are obviously dated for today, but when you consider the time that it came out, I mean, it's super impressive. And then, like, the grandiosity of the story and the characters, I think, is still amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, going to what you're saying about it aging well, I mean, you know, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, the fact that you can kind of watch it and even have this reading of it of, like, maybe, like, Frodo and Sam, you know, or, like, if not gay, at least, like, there is some hint of, like, maybe they are, like, bisexual, or, you know what I mean? Like, and...
Yeah, like, we're still getting new things out of every rewatch.
Yeah.
Because there's so much content to it.
Yeah,
you know?
and even if that wasn't, like, necessarily the author's intent, which I'm fairly certain it wasn't, again, because as we've established, J.R.R. Tolkien and me, best friends, I know everything about him. But
have you watched the movie about him?
Do you remember when Marco was, like, downplaying his linguistics degree?
Yeah. He's just a linguist, guys. But I think, like, as with most things that are, like, well done and well written or whatever, it does kind of have a life of its own that you can read into. And yeah, and I mean, to what like I was joking about Carol earlier, like really the only place where it kind of falls flat is I guess you would say like representation, really, because there isn't like there's like fantasy elements in it, but it's like they're all pretty much just white and men.
Yeah, that's definitely the major flaw, and the lack of like female characters.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and
that's why I said it's mostly aged well. I mean,
yeah, that is the thing.
Besides those areas,
at least there's nothing explicitly racist about
it.
You know what I mean?
Like it's not like we're watching friggin' what's it called? Like Birth of a Nation or anything like that.
No, for sure. It's it is one of those things. And again, like obviously movies made in the early 2000s but based on books from the 1950s. So, I understand if you're going to do a faithful adaptation that kind of stuff probably wasn't in the books in the first place. So but we were joking about the Ents earlier, but like there was literally a subplot about like environmentalism in the movie, which is like
true.
It's really
all that
cool.
Deforestation.
Yeah,
and it didn't feel like shoehorned in, at least not for me.
No,
anyway.
And like Carol, you're obviously probably the biggest like climate person between the three of us. You can maybe speak to it.
Climate.
I don't know. Like I don't know how to. What do you want me to say? She's the biggest. She's the climate one. I'm the
environmentalist.
Like a climate activist.
Climate
listen,
activist.
Dan is the professional one. I am.
In what respect?
Dan.
In all respect, Dan.
I am J.R.R. Tolkien's best friend.
Right.
And Carol.
And Mark Zuckerberg's best friend.
Yeah, and Carol is the environment. Those are our,
one with the earth.
Those are our roles in this podcast.
I'm glad that we established that, and it's going to be consistent with every single
every episode.
Even when we're not talking about something J.R.R. Tolkien related.
I'll just tell you guys
Marco's
his views.
going to have to put in a fact, yeah.
Yeah, on every topic.
One thing about the Ents, though, is I was a little frustrated at the fact that they took so long to confer, and then everyone decided, okay, we're out, we're not doing this battle, and then they walk 2 steps, find one forest of, like, sure, they're friends, destroyed, and then immediately everyone is all in. They took all of that time to discuss it, they all said no, and then they see one thing and they're like, okay, we're all in, we're gonna now take over this entire, I don't know, city, settlement, what are the places they're called? I don't know.
But, that's interesting.
Yeah. Isengard, how do you say that? Is that what it's called? Isengard. It's in my notes somewhere, I'm just too lazy to scroll. But yeah, they just were ready to go, and they were badass when they did.
When did they learn how to run?
Yeah,
they did, man. I think it's interesting. Like, I also think it's kind of silly the way it's executed in the movie.
Yeah,
I think it's executed a bit better in the extended edition because you spend I would say like 90% of the additions in the extended cut is just like with the Ents. Like there is so much more.
Oh, is that
there
right?
is so much nonsense in the extended cut. But I think that like the theme of it obviously is like, well, it's not affecting us, so it doesn't matter. But then to kind of see that like something that may not be affecting you directly, like also does affect you, like in some ways. Maybe if it's not like one for one, is like applicable to climate in a lot of ways. But
oh no, for sure.
It's just to what you're saying, it's done in that really kind of forced dramatic way of like no, and then 1 second later, okay, fine. It doesn't really, it's not executed to its fullest. But it's interesting that idea is even in there in general.
And it's interesting that I didn't pick up on the idea, but it is very applicable, and I love that.
Well, to be fair...
It's like such a good read, yeah.
To be fair, you had to watch 12 hours worth of Lord of the Rings content in the span of a week.
That is true.
And also a week when you had to get a tetanus shot, so, it's been a hell of a week.
It's been a hell of a week. That's definitely... I'm not arguing with that.
Yeah. All right, is there anything else we've not covered? Carol, is there anything else in your notes you'd like to bring up about Lord of the Rings?
There's a lot in my notes. Okay, I just have one question that I don't think I was ever perfectly clear on. The Uruk-hai are the creatures that were created by Saruman? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. like Rita Repulsa style from like Power Rangers.
Wait, are you telling me
they came out of goo?
You've seen Power Rangers, but not Lord of the Rings? Is that what we're?
I did regularly watch Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the original series, yes, and I've seen the first film. What's the point?
Go Power Rangers!
I had a couple of Power Rangers dolls. I had a little watch with the Red Ranger on it.
That's hilarious.
That was my shit. But yeah, okay, now that that's settled, I think that was a big question that I probably should have known the answer to. But
well, it's not really explicitly explained, but yeah, I mean, that's basically what happens in it, so.
I always got confused between them and the orcs.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of, I think the only difference is the Urukai are more superior, more intelligent, slightly more intelligent.
Yeah.
Like version, but they're all kind of like, they're all the same thing. Just generic, brainless, you know.
They all just exist to die, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that.
But one of the things, like I was mentioning earlier, that makes it very redeeming is the amount of practical effects. Like, it would have been it's so much better that it wasn't just a bunch of CGI, you know, like brainless random guys. It's actual guys that you can see had like very detailed makeup applied and stuff like that. It added a more human element, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
For me, at least.
I'd agree with that too.
I got a very Planet of the Apes vibe from that. I don't know why. I remember putting that in my notes. Just seeing all the
Tim
people
Burton
in
Planet
makeup.
of the Apes.
Tim Burton.
The original Planet of the Apes.
Oh, okay.
Carol, you have also unlocked another part of my brain that you really don't want to unlock right now. I have too much Planet of the Apes knowledge for anyone in this world.
Oh, I know.
I have too much. Yeah, you're right, though. It does kind of have that same kind of practical sense that, it's always better. I've never seen that in a movie and thought, like, oh, I wish this was CGI instead. Like, literally ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we officially have talked about the entirety of anything to do with Lord of the Rings.
I think we've officially reached feature length. Too.
Yeah, almost.
That is the goal of the podcast, hence the name. We never really explained why, but that's why.
They'll figure it out.
If they made it this far, then that's why we call it feature length. It's because every podcast is going to be about an hour and a half if we can manage it.
Also, if you did make it this far, like...
God bless.
Why?
Yeah.
Did Dan
but thank
pay
you very much.
Did someone use our non-existent budget to pay you to listen to the whole thing?
If you did make it this far, thank you for being clearly one of our best friends that's just watching this. So when we ask you questions about it, you'll be like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I really hope you took notes, by the way.
Yeah, really. I'm going to quiz all of you. Angelo, if you're listening to this, just know you're going to get wrecked next time we talk.
We're doing personal shout-outs at the end.
Shout out to Angelo for no other reason other than
it's like instead of our patrons, we're just shouting out like, oh, here's our friend that we wanted to shout out for.
Here's our friends that are going to be the only people that watch this or listen to it, I guess. Okay, is that it? Did we do it?
I think so.
Okay.
We did it. Not a Lord of the Rings length feature, but a feature.
I mean,
very few things so.
Maybe in the extended
if
cut.
we ever talk for 3 hours, I think someone needs to end this podcast. But do we know what our next episode is going to be? Have we decided on that yet?
No, I don't think so.
No, we've talked about a few ideas.
Yeah, we have a few. We got a few things floating around in the think tank. I don't know. We'll figure something out.
So we'll make it a surprise?
We'll make it a surprise. Tune in.
Yeah, definitely.
Tune in, and I think we said we'll try and do this every 2 weeks, right?
Every couple of weeks, yeah.
Okay.
That seems feasible.
Okay. Well, we'll try and figure something out, and then we'll do it.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks for listening, guys. And
thank you so much.
You know,
yeah, thank you. I have no idea who will be hearing this, but thank you so much.
If you liked it, and you know people that may also like it,
maybe just us listening back to our own voices, but
just go ahead and show it to people and let them know that your 3 friends.
Show it to people.
Let them know that you're
check out this black screen.
Let them know that your 3 friends from high school who you haven't thought about in like 6 years just recorded a podcast on like 15-year-old movies, and
in the middle of a pandemic too.
In the middle of a pandemic. I'm sure this is going to be the thing that helps people through. So.
Oh yeah, totally.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Peace.